Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Menard Center for the Study of Institutions and Innovations program on Black entrepreneurship. My name is Mary Spaeth. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship in the School of Management and in the business department. Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of Tim Scheel, who is the director of the Menard Center. Unfortunately, he's been ill over the weekend and couldn't make it. I hope he's online. So greeting to all of you online as well to this program. You'll notice there'll be some comments on the sidebar in the Q&A. So feel free to write questions and comments during the program, and we'll try to address them the best we can towards the end of the program. I'd like to begin by acknowledging a number of people, but first introducing our speakers, our guests here of honor. And so I'll start probably from left to right, at least from my side, right to left from the rest of you looking here. And we have Charles Ross, who is here, is the CEO of the International Business Innovation Association, INBIA, flown in from Orlando. Did you come in from Orlando today? And thank you very much for braving the storms. I'm going to read from this so I don't miss anything, as much as I've known Charles for quite some time. I don't know how far we go back. I've been a member for, I think, 28 years of NBIA, so that's a while now. NBIA is a global nonprofit that supports entrepreneurship in 30 countries. Got it started in the early 80s. Charles has mentored founders and CEOs at more than 30 high-growth companies. Previously was director at Ameritech's Venture Capital Division and has held leadership positions at Georgia Tech and Kennesaw State University as well. So welcome, Charles. We have moderating this evening. That won't be I. I'll be listening and watching with the rest of you. But we have Keenan Grinnell, who's the CEO of Global Capital Group. Wave Keenan there and on the screen. He's an entrepreneur and works with entrepreneurship and economic development as a consultant in a firm based in Wauwatosa. He's taught at Colgate, Marquette, and Auburn universities. Grinnell believes Booker T. Washington's ideas regarding entrepreneurial leadership, saying that they are the keys to Black success in the 21st century. Welcome. And last but not least, Tamisha Butler, coming over from Eau Claire. Thank you very much. She is a doula and lactation counselor and founded just recently in the last year, Misha and Company. Her mission is to help women keep their power and beauty during the birth experience. And she'll have a lot to tell you about that activity and its more and more relevant status, and even in this region. Last year, Butler received the Red Letter Grant, a Red Letter Grant, among other women in Eau Claire, to help her get started with this business. And she may share a little bit more with you on that, particularly for women in the audience interested in starting businesses. So I think I've told you a little bit about the Menard Center. We do have in the audience a couple of people, I guess. I'd love to introduce all of you. But representing the School of Management and a co-host for this evening's event is Professor Mark Fenton. Mark, you can wave there.
I'm also the business program director at Stout, very large program, and I get the fortunate job of meeting with students every day in my office or in my classes. It's always fun to do that. So thank you.
Thanks, Mark. We also have new to Stout, relatively new, time's going fast. I would say Seth Hudson. I'd certainly like to recognize Seth back there, who is the Director of Corporate Relations and Economic Engagement here at Stout. And for those of you who've known in the past with Randy Holke and the Discovery Center and Fab Lab and a lot of other activities, Seth is taking over all of that kind of activity and more. So thank you for coming. I think that's it. Let's get started with the program. And I'm going to turn it over to Keenan.
Thank you so much, Mary. And I'm going to take the mic and first and foremost, I just want to say on behalf of myself and other panelists, we are so very happy to be here at UW-Stout. This is my first time coming to campus, and I spent 19 years in higher education as a professor and administrator at 3 different universities, and I can tell you that it's a certain feeling that you have when you walk on a campus, knowing that it's just full of smart people in every particular corner that you have here. And so I've met some extremely smart people. I've met some entrepreneurs in the future, and I know that there's a lot of money in this room right now in terms of some future billionaires. So I'm excited about that. But I want to go ahead and get started. There's a range of questions that I'm going to ask my 2 panelists, and I know we had a set of questions that we were expecting to work around, but I decided I'd gumbo it a little bit and add some other spices to it. So the first question I want both of you to tackle is, what are you really passionate about as an entrepreneur? I thought that would be sort of an easy, segue kind of question to get your juices flowing and, kind of give us that feel for, what you're passionate about. Start out with you then, Charles.
Okay, great. Thanks, Keenan, and really looking forward to our discussion this evening. And as Marriott shared, so I'm a part of an organization that we support organizations that support entrepreneurs. But I've been fortunate over past couple of decades in my career where I've had a chance to actually work directly with several entrepreneurs. And one of the areas that I'm involved in now in my role at MBIA is helping other communities with aligning their resources to help entrepreneurs in all the different flavors. And what's very passionate or drives passion for me is looking at how we can allow all of our communities to leverage this engine of entrepreneurship. And we'll probably get into this a little bit more, but when you take a look at the economic impact of entrepreneurship, especially in the United States, it's just a tremendous force. And I think actually I recall some research recently that looked at kind of like the past 20 years or so and identified that entrepreneurship was really the difference between negative job growth and job growth. And allowing for that vehicle, that engine to be used in communities where you have different makeup of communities and different geographies and different races. That's one of the areas that we're very passionate about at MBIA, and seeing how we can help communities allow their individuals in their communities to pursue entrepreneurship. So if you have an idea, you have the passion, the persistence to pursue that, how can we make sure that you have the resources and the know-how and the connection to capital to make that happen? So that's one of the areas that I'm very passionate about. And there's certain populations. So we're going to be talking about Black entrepreneurship. There's definitely opportunities to improve resources for Black entrepreneurs to be successful, women entrepreneurs to be successful, entrepreneurs in rural geographies to be successful. So really kind of helping all of those entrepreneurs be successful is something we're passionate about.
Excellent. Tamisha, what are you passionate about in terms of entrepreneurship?
So I'm a doula, and a doula is basically a support person for a laboring woman or someone's looking to become pregnant, and just basically help them through their birthing process. I have birthed three children. I have a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So just going through the experience of being a minority and basically predominantly white hospitals, I've learned the different things that our voice, we lost our voice. So my passion came just basically to help women get their voice back and their power in their birthing experience, in the way of just respecting and listening, and then just bridging the gap between the doctors and the birthing woman. Just being able to be her advocacy when she felt she's lost her voice or she feels that she cannot voice these concerns and things that she feel the doctor is not taking her serious in. I'm just going to be there to help her, get her voice back and be able to let her know, like, you still have a voice, and this is what the doctor is saying, and just different things like that. And that's just basically my passion, is basically helping women get their beauty and keep their beauty in their birth experience.
Excellent. So I want you to start off by telling me a little something about a success story that you want to share with everyone today. It can be a personal success story, or it can be a success story of someone that you know about, but really would love to hear a personal success story about you, because one, that's why you're here today, and we want to be able to learn and grow from your wisdom and knowledge and experience.
Okay, well, I would say personally, I started my business in the beginning of 2021. So I would say my personal experience or success story would be basically winning the red letter, a local grant called the Red Letter Grant. It basically, reassured me that my vision or my passion turned business plan was on the right path. Helping women get their beauty, keep their beauty in their just their strength and their voice and their birth story, their birth planning. And I think that's just, I would say, my success story, because it just let me know that not only other people in my community, but women in my community, a variety of ages of women, they seen the need for, my passion or my idea. And it just gave me that extra, push to keep going on the track that I'm on.
Charles?
Okay, so this was one of the questions that Keenan gave us in advance. So this is not impromptu. But I'm gonna turn it on you.
That'll be fine.
So in thinking about a success story and the topic around Black entrepreneurship, so I was just thinking about, I think as Dr. Spaeth mentioned, I've probably worked closely with about 30 or so startups. And out of those 30 startups, for like the first part of my career, I was doing corporate venture capital and then private venture capital, and focused on high-tech startups. And I probably say out of the 20 or so startups that I worked up in that first part of the career, I probably ran into one African-American founder during that time. And then when I transitioned to, I was actually working at an incubator at Georgia Tech University in Atlanta, Georgia. And then I had a chance to work with some more minority, African-American, Black CEOs at these companies. And so I was thinking about those CEOs as my success stories. And then what I wanted to share with the group is just kind of some of my takeaways in terms of the attributes of those successful entrepreneurs. The first thing, though, that it made me think about was just, well, how do you define the success as an entrepreneur? And hopefully one of the things we'll get into with this conversation is that the way in which you define success really controls how communities will look at supporting entrepreneurs. Traditionally, the metric of success for entrepreneurs has been around wealth creation. So do you make a lot of money for the founding entrepreneurs? And that's one measure of success. But be very curious in hearing from the audience of what you attribute success to for an entrepreneur. But what I've observed is in many cases, it could be self-employment for the founder, and that could be a success. Or in cases, it could also be the ability for the venture that an entrepreneur founds to create jobs for the community could be a measure of success. But then when I look at just these attributes of these entrepreneurs, and I'm thinking of George White, just in case they might be listening on streaming or whatever, George White and Dolan Falconer, you won't know these names, but these individuals had a couple of qualities. So first of all, I would say that they were passionate about what they were pursuing. Second, I would say that they were persistent in what they were pursuing. And I'm sure Tamisha she's probably nodding her head already on this. Third, I would say that they're very self-aware. I think in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to recognize that you know, as you become more successful, the opportunity is going to be larger than just a single entrepreneur, single individual. You need to be able to identify what are your strengths and strengths you need to bring to your team. And then the last thing I would say is just coachability. So in lieu of just like a personal success stories, I'll just share those are the attributes that I think are very important for an entrepreneur to be successful.
And I know since you said that you were going to throw that back at me, but I'm going to go ahead and take the liberty to respond to that. I'm going to follow your lead because you talked about success from an organizational lens, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. When I was an assistant professor of political science at Auburn, I was invited to a luncheon, and this luncheon was sponsored by an economics professor in the business school, and he wanted an African-American professor to come and share this luncheon opportunity with this Black faculty member from the University of Texas at Austin that he had invited. So we're sitting at this table, there's 15 people, and we're the only 2 Blacks in the room, and this guy is asking me questions, and I'm becoming a little offended by it because when I left Northern Illinois University with my PhD in political science, I am not lying, I was a diehard bleeding Cornel West guy. I was the biggest democratic socialist on this side of the Mississippi River. So I'm sitting at Auburn, the quotable West, and I run into John Sibley Butler, who is probably the foremost authority in terms of African-American entrepreneurship in America. He asked me one question. He said, do you have any family lineage in terms of entrepreneurship? I'm going, yes. I said, my mother and father, along with 4 other Black families in Cleveland, Mississippi, in the early 1970s, owned a grocery store called Brothers Supermarket. And he goes, what? And you sitting here talking to me about democratic socialism? Shame on you. I equated that chance meeting with him as the same as Saul on his way on the road to Damascus to persecute the Christians. I got knocked off of my donkey, okay? And the bright lights hit me. And from then on, I was a champion and an advocate of Black entrepreneurship. So I started a conference called the African American Entrepreneurship Summit. It started off as a state conference, then it became a regional conference, then it became a national conference, and then it ultimately became an international conference because I took it to Cape Town, South Africa, and I had the sponsorship of 4 presidents of South African universities in the Cape Town region. And so that's an organizational success because I can only imagine the number of entrepreneurs that I've helped in the state of Alabama. But what was also so important about that conference, we had a youth component to it. And so we had the largest youth, the Black Youth Entrepreneurship Conference in the country. And so thinking about the young minds that we were able to touch at that particular point in time. So that's an organizational success story on my part, and it's also an independent success story on my part as well. I got a lot more, but that's, you know, we have 2 other people that we need to hear from besides myself. So I have another one for you. Is entrepreneurship for everyone?
Yes and no. How's that for an answer? So it's interesting. So I think that you know, I think the practice of entrepreneurship and then the profession of entrepreneurship. So I mean, I think the practice of entrepreneurship is applicable to just about everyone. And I would love to ask, can we ask questions of the audience? Is that possible? Okay. Who has a favorite? Anyone can share like their favorite definition of an entrepreneur. Anyone would like to share that might be a part of the entrepreneurship club? Anyone? I'll give up the mic here. Mary?
I just usually kind of say that an entrepreneur is someone that is sort of like an adventurer in business. It doesn't always have to be strictly creating a business, but, you know, sort of an adventurer. Sort of vague, but fulfills the role.
I love that. Adventure. Anyone else? So the definition I love, I'm probably gonna butcher this a little bit, but it's like an individual that pursues opportunity without regard to resources currently on hand. And I think that, yes, go ahead.
As far as an entrepreneur goes, a lot of times you think of it as somebody who is starting a business and creating from the ground up, they're creating a business. I think you can be an entrepreneur within an organization if you have an idea that you think is going to help that organization. And if you get on your soapbox and you push and you promote and you sell that idea, you are being entrepreneurial and helping the growth of the organization.
I love those definitions. And so I think that some of these competencies that we've talked about in terms of being able to identify trends and new opportunities, being able to bring resources to those opportunities, being able to manage risk. So I think those are many skills. And I think that there are personal attributes that would predispose people to be more successful in picking up those skills and mastering those skills. So I think the practice of entrepreneurship can apply to just about everyone. But then, this profession of being like a really, really good entrepreneur, I think there's some people that are better than others. So I think it's one of those things that you can learn. But I also think that it's an area where people are gifted in that area.
Yep. Tamisha, what about you? Is entrepreneurship for everybody?
I would say yes. I would say an entrepreneur is someone who has an idea or a product and they go out and they try and they step out there and they say, hey, I'm going to see if this is actually something worth, it's basically someone having faith in what they believe or their purpose, their idea, and saying, hey, I'm going to put this forth. I'm going to, maybe you work another job. Maybe you have a full-time job. Maybe you say, hey, it's time for me to step on my own and put my idea out here in the world and see how it goes. So I would say yes, as far as an entrepreneur, but as far as I think an entrepreneur and a boss is two different things. A boss is someone who employs other people. So I believe everyone can be an entrepreneur because, as they were saying, you get out there and you start doing a thing and you learn what works, what doesn't work. You get more knowledgeable in what you're trying to put out in the world. And then that's going to, then you reevaluate and you see, hey, is this something that's really working? Can I now grow? So now I'm going to be employing people or just growing in any kind of way of growth. But I believe anyone can be an entrepreneur, but not everyone can be a boss.
I'm going to respond to that because I know Charles is going to require me to not only moderate, but participate as well. I have a definition for entrepreneurship, and that is an individual that's on a journey towards wealth creation. And I think and this is especially for the young people out in the audience, if you're going to be involved in entrepreneurship, there's really, in my personal opinion, one reason for you to be doing it, and it's to be on the road towards wealth creation. See, in the African American community, and we're talking about Black entrepreneurship, that's why we're here today. To say the word wealth creation is almost a dirty word in some respects. And I've heard it too often that, you shouldn't be concerned about becoming wealthy. You shouldn't be concerned about engaging in the wealth process. Well, why not? That's what America was built on. The 55 framers were in the mercantile. They were commercial individuals. That's why they built this great democracy. It was built on capitalist principles and ideas. We're still living off of things that they did. So why not play the game correctly? And another concept I have in terms of entrepreneurship is that me personally, in terms of my own consulting business, we solve problems. So we're in business to solve problems. And that's what separates me from anybody else that's playing this game of entrepreneurial activity. All right, The next question is, and I kind of want to go back to Tamisha, and this is for you, but Charles, feel free to jump in, and I probably want to jump in at some point in time. Why are Black women entering the entrepreneurial ranks faster than Black men?
I feel they are because they're getting into rooms that Black men are necessarily not able to get into sometimes. Sometimes it's easier for a woman to navigate different situations rather than a man. I mean, like, what when you say that, what do you mean? Because I see a lot of, successful men as well. So when you say women more than men, what do you mean?
Well, the data is basically saying that Black women have just become, are not necessarily obsessed, but they have really gravitated towards the entrepreneurial process, and they've done it much faster than not just Black men, but anybody else that professes to be an entrepreneur, but more so than Black men.
I think it's really just, it goes back to what you say when people say their passions and it's just like we're in the environment and now we have different like, just say the pandemic. The pandemic gave people a chance to sit down and be still and realize you got to make something work besides just, being able to go on someone's job. Now you can sit down and see what you can bring to this world. What needs can you meet? And then seeing that, hey, I have a great idea and now I want to put it forth now that I have the chance to sit down and think about it and say, hey, this, get a plan together and say, this is what I'm going to bring to the world. Now I have the time to sit down and put it together, put my business plan together and put it out here in the world.
So basically what you shared is a mindset of being disciplined. Yeah. Charles, what's your take on that?
That's a really easy question. So I would say, so I have not seen any of the data that's conclusive in this area, but in thinking about the answer to this, I would think about just like thinking about the drivers of entrepreneurship. So when you think about individuals that are pre-nascent entrepreneurs, and it could be by gender, it could be by race or geography, and you think about what I would do is I would think about, what are the preconditions that really need to be there to move someone from thinking about an entrepreneur to actually being an entrepreneur. So I think about having examples and of what it means to be a successful entrepreneur. Think about just the having the mindset in general. Think about the resources like personal wealth in order to pursue that. I think about kind of support systems. So those are the things I would look at is how do those things compare for Black men versus Black women? And I think that, there's probably some differences there that motivate that. The other thing I would say is thinking about the type of entrepreneurship that would be associated with Black women having this great success in having this rate of startup activity. And I know that around the pandemic, there's been a lot of work on looking at, are you pursuing entrepreneurship from an opportunity standpoint? Are you pursuing it from a necessity standpoint? So I don't have answers to those, but those are the things that I would look at.
Okay. You mentioned, you keep mentioning the concept of mindset. What kind of mindset have you noticed among some of the founders that you've worked with, as well as yourself, that really, how can I say, separate them from others who are engaged in entrepreneurial activities?
Yeah, so, I talked about previously, like the perseverance and persistence is really key. And, the mindset of it's just an opportunity mindset, I think, is what I've observed with successful entrepreneurs and, just uber confidence. And it's interesting because I would say that I have not started a company myself. I've funded several companies, and it's interesting as an investor, you can fund a company. And I'll share this story when I was working in corporate venture capital. And, I would like look after deal. And I remember like one of the first deals I got approved and a president was giving me some advice. And he said, well, I tell you what, he said, you can always find a reason not to do a deal. And the key is to find a reason to do a deal. And so, my mindset early in my career was like, well, this is not going to work. And I'll give you the 20 reasons why it's not going to work. And an entrepreneur, the mindset of successful entrepreneurs is that they may identify that there's 20 reasons that it might not work, but they're confident that they can solve all 20 of those reasons. So, I think just having that opposite of a scarcity mindset is so important for entrepreneurs.
Misha, what about you?
I'll just say first, making sure that you believe in whatever it is that you're trying to bring forth wholeheartedly. Because if you don't believe in it, there's no way you can convince anyone else that is going to work or you're meeting a need. And then I would just say making sure that you're having accountability and consistency, because those two things are going to keep you, going and keep your business weathering storms and injustices and inequalities and different things that may come your way. But just making sure, first, like you said, having the confidence to say, hey, whether this person is saying, I don't think this is going to work, and in your heart that this is going to work, and you make sure you find reasons to make sure that it does work, just because you believe in it wholeheartedly.
I want to interject as well in terms of this mindset. And I want to, again, keep it focused on, Black entrepreneurship. For so long, in our communities, parents and family members have encouraged African Americans to go to college, get an education, go to work for someone else, find that ideal job. I think there needs to be a paradigm shift in our community. Yes, go to college, get an education, but look for opportunities. Look for problems to solve. Look for things that you can do that can create a niche for yourself. There's a global economy out here waiting on your innovativeness, your expertise, and your eagerness in order to be a world leader in something that you're exceptionally good at. So education and entrepreneurship, as far as I'm concerned, should be the mindset, not education and then find employment. And I'm not saying that going to work for a company is bad, because I've worked for several organizations, but I love being my own boss. It's just something about being the CEO of me that excites me. Okay. So
I agree with most of what you're saying. But what I will say is that for students and as you're pursuing entrepreneurship, everybody has a boss at the end of the day. So even if you don't have any shareholders in your company, you're the CEO of the company, then you sell products. And when your customer's not satisfied with your product, then they'll stop buying your product or your service. And they are pretty much kind of playing a role as a boss. So everyone has to be accountable to someone, at least in most cases. But the other thing I would agree with is, when we talk about, I'll just share like in my family and in my culture, and I'm not going to say what decade I was when I was graduating, but it was a long time ago. But yeah, kind of the counsel it was receiving was go to school, get your degree, and get a good job. But what's interesting is when we look at this entrepreneurship, though, I talked about my preferred definition is pursuing this opportunity without regard to resources. And if you have a lot of resources, you cannot have regard for them, right? But if you're in a community, you're from a family where your wealth is 1/10 of the average wealth in the United States, then you don't have the luxury of being able to, pursue an idea for 12 months without income. So, there's this balance of, okay, so maybe you go out and get a job, you get experience, you also get some resources so that then you can invest your own money and your sweat equity into entrepreneurship.
Speaking of this, I know that Tamisha sort of mentioned, trying to maneuver through the entrepreneurial headwinds, during the pandemic. So pivoting a business during a crisis, whether a pandemic or economic inequality or financial, how did both of you survive COVID? I know we're not over COVID, but from a business standpoint of view, how did you, go through that maze? How did you make it work? Tamisha, you started your company in 2021. You started your company in the middle of the pandemic. How did you do that, and how did you come out, on the other end of that?
I would just say basically what COVID or this pandemic taught us is that basically your presence on social media, on these social media platforms is very important, because that's where most people are getting a lot of their information from, or when they're looking to, buy things or think of new ideas, they're going to one of these various platforms. So what it taught me is that I have to get out here and, make sure that staying relevant on one of these social media platforms. And not only that, just making sure I'm just coming to different events like this event, or other events where I'm putting my face in front of the public and letting them know, hey, I'm a doula, this is what I do, this is what I offer, this is the need that I'm meeting, and just making them know that I'm here, I'm out here, and I'm here to serve and to help.
What about you, Charles?
I'll share. So for my COVID story, at the time that COVID happened, I was in my present role right now. Actually, it was just a little different because I was the interim CEO for this organization. And this organization is about a little over $1 million in revenue, nonprofit a year. And out of that $1 million, probably 40% of our revenues was associated with getting people together from across the globe in several rooms that are not much larger than this room. And as you can imagine, that was problematic when there was a pandemic that was going on. And it was interesting because I remember, so we had a major conference that was scheduled in April. Was it 2019 or 20? When did the pandemic start? 2020?
2019.
2019. And we had a conference scheduled in April, and we got up to like probably 3 weeks before, so it was like mid-March before we could actually cancel the conference. And one of the barriers we had to cancel in the conference was that we had a hotel contract that at the time, if we were going to honor that hotel contract, the organization probably would have went out of business. And so you say, like, how do you survive out of that? So grace helps a lot. It was interesting because the event was scheduled to occur in Boston, and everybody knew that it was a pandemic, but there was a need for the local health person in Boston to declare that it's a pandemic, so then the hotel contract can be released. So we got through that. But then the other thing that happened was that we embraced technology. So we went from that time in March to probably September with our first virtual conference that we did. And being able to get comfortable with adopting new technology was really important there. It was the first time that we did that, and being able to just kind of deal with risk, identifying what are the risk items, and then managing this risk was pretty important. And the other thing I would say I think is very important in just dealing with these crises that you might address is just being able to react quickly. Speed was very important. And then the other thing is communications, and just being able to be authentic and transparent with your communications with in this case, our members or our customers was really important for us to survive through that process.
Excellent. As a consultant, when the pandemic hit, I almost, from a financial scenario, could have perished, but I didn't because I was exceptionally blessed to be working with clients that asked themselves the question, why not? Why can't we continue to move forward, even in the midst of the worst calamity basically known to human history? And then they also said, in spite of the fact that we are in a major pandemic, there's an end to this. So let's keep moving forward. And so one of my clients was a major social service agency at that time, huge. Matter of fact, about $70 million in terms of income. Right now, probably 160 employees. Was able to basically do their strategic plan, the implementation of that plan, built a think tank for them, basically overhauled their information technology for them. And matter of fact, this will be probably one of the first social service agencies in the state of Wisconsin that will actually embrace artificial intelligence. So was able to keep them focused at the task at hand, even in the face of a major pandemic. Now, was unsuccessful with another client because they really needed hands-on kind of nurturing through the pandemic, and they suffered a lot. And as a service provider to them, I suffered along with them as well. So you have good times and not so good times, in a pandemic if you're a consultant and a business owner. So with that in mind, what obstacles have both of you faced and overcome? What obstacles have you faced and overcome in your professional careers?
Just say, being new and just starting, just getting out my own way and just basically, stop waiting for the perfect time to get out there and present my idea. Because in reality, in the perfect time might never come. So you just have to get out there and start the thing. Because once you get out there and start your idea or your passion, that's when you learn. You learn what works. You learn what doesn't work. You learn. You just learn. You're better at this. Your strengths, your weaknesses, and I think just basically stop waiting for the perfect time to get out there and implement my idea. Get out there and start doing it and learning what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And I think that's what helped. That's what helped me get over some of my obstacles. Is just getting out there and learning and getting out there and figuring it out.
And I'll share just from the Black entrepreneurship perspective and what we've seen in the research, that many Black entrepreneurs are facing, and what I've observed in working with Black entrepreneurs. Probably number one obstacle has been access to networks. So currently right now, how much of entrepreneurship is supported in the United States, it is very much, I think, but is impacted by who you know, in terms of who you know that may have capital, who do you know that might want to join your company, who do you know that might want to test your products. So having that relational capital is so important for an entrepreneur, and then those who don't have it is an obstacle. Then so access to the networks. Then I think probably next would be probably access to capital, and not just financial capital, but social capital, intellectual capital. I think that's important. What I think is encouraging that I've observed in the past 20 plus years is the access to know-how has really improved. 10, 15 years ago, it used to be very mysterious on, what an entrepreneur was, how do you do it, what are the, kind of techniques, and, just with the growth in just how we communicate and social media and the internet. I mean, you can find out tools and methods of launching a startup, and there's no dearth of knowledge there or access to that knowledge. But there's, getting those networks and then access to mentors and resources are obstacles.
How many university professors do we have in here? Show of hands. Do we have any tenured faculty in here? I'm probably the only person on this campus that ever walked away from tenure. I walked away from tenure at a major university, matter of fact, a U.S. News and World Report university, to say that I'm going to go into business for myself. Now, I know several of you think that on that road, I probably stopped off at a mental hospital, because you just don't walk away from a tenure situation to go into business. But I took a risk, but most importantly, I invested in myself. I am my greatest own investment. I invested in myself. I believe in myself. So yes, it was tough times at the early beginnings. But if you believe in something, you believe in yourself, you believe that the Almighty is going to wrap his loving arms around you and protect you through that process and keep protecting you along the way, there is nothing that you can't achieve in your life. So that's very important to me. Again, risk taking and investing in oneself. So with all of this in mind, what resources do the both of you have that makes up your superpower? Think about, you got superpower. So what resources do you have that make up that superpower? And I'll give you an example, because I know you're trying to figure out where is he going with this. I have 3 businesses, and one of the businesses works significantly with associates. And so I have a suite of associates that I rely on, I trust in. I am not the smartest person in the room. If I'm the smartest person in the room, then something's wrong with me being in the room. I have to be the dumbest person in the room, because that's how I absorb and I learn. My nonprofit, I have 7 PhDs, African American PhDs, associated with my nonprofit as Global Fellows. So those are resources for me. And I come out of there feeling like I'm Superman, because I have all of that intellectual capital as a resource behind me. So that's what I mean by your superpower. What resources do you have that allow you to have that superpower?
I'm going to say that for Keenan, I think it depends on, like, that could, being that you said not the smartest, I'm not going to say what you said, not the smartest person in the room as a superpower. It probably depends on who's in the room. So if it's a really smart room, that's not too bad. If it's not a really smart room, I don't know. But anyway, I will say for me, probably, probably kind of like ideas. So I drive my team crazy, because I'm like, oh yeah, how about this? And do this idea, and then they're like, okay, well, how are we going to implement that? But I would say being able to look at some innovative ways to address problems is, I enjoy it for sure. And so I would love for it to be my superpower. That's the case.
For me, I would say it would be my passion behind my mission, and basically helping women keep their power in their beauty and their birth experience. And just knowing, just me being a woman that's birthed 3 times, and knowing the different things that I wish could have been different in my birth experience, just being able to help women keep those things that they lost along the way during birth, and after birth, and just different things, helping them figure out the different changes that they go through. So I would say my superpower for me in my business would be just my passion behind what I'm doing, and just being able to see the outcomes of my presence being there, helping these different women along their birth journey.
So entrepreneurs and economic justice, is that a mix? Is that a possibility? Can you be both an entrepreneur and someone who's involved in economic justice, which also puts you in the ball field of social justice as well?
Yeah, so I think there is overlap for sure between the two. And it's an area that for our organization, we're trying to become more competent in. So our work right now is around, we've done a lot of work around helping organizations become more diverse and inclusive. And the driver on that has been an economic imperative, an imperative of, okay, we got this society in the United States, we got this economy in the United States, and we have a significant portion of that economy that historically has been disenfranchised. And if we want to continue to leverage entrepreneurship to grow the economy, we have to make sure that everybody in the economy can use it and leverage that tool. And that's a very, well, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's less controversial than a discussion around, yes, and then entrepreneurship is a way to bring restorative justice economically to a group of people. And that's much more difficult to have in our conversations in our communities. I think it can definitely be a viable tool, especially from the standpoint, Keenan, what you mentioned up front is that, you know, an area that you put a lot of value in, a lot of activity in is the wealth creation capabilities of that entrepreneurship. So just in and of itself, if here's a tool that can create wealth that helps to restore economics and bring justice to the economic and quality system that we have in the United States. So I do think that there's some play there and overlap, connections. But what I do know is that I don't think we've figured out as communities the best way to kind of have these conversations and then how to put things in place around that objective.
Okay. Tamisha, what about you?
Yeah, I feel that there's going to always be economic injustices or inequalities because there is a wealth gap. And, you know, the people that's been doing it, the people that's had the most wealth is used to it the way that it is. So with us having these conversations, we're able to, one, see what the problems are as far as why this is such a wealth gap, and just find ways to solve these, whether we're, you know, networking or just being able to solve different problems that's causing people to not have access to this wealth or access to these opportunities so that they may be able to start creating this different opportunity for their self or their community.
Okay, very good. This leads into another question. How do you create legacy money for your families?
I would say investing in your youth. For me, it would be, I have 3 children, so being able to invest in their minds and invest in their future as far as getting them on the right path as quick as possible. Because as Doc was saying, you know, we're so used to saying, hey, let's go to school, and then after school, after we graduate high school, let's go to college. And for some of us, that may not be the right or the best path. Like you said, we might have to get into these jobs, but just understand what is the take back from you being in this position at this job or at these universities. We just have to be able to educate our children earlier on as far as, you know, what is the purpose? What are they here for? What are they looking to do? What are they looking to accomplish, and get them to that as soon as possible. So I would say investing in your children.
Charles, you good with that? You know, one of the things that I think that we could all chime in and share is that I think we need to create successful businesses. And I think that anybody that goes into entrepreneurship should do that. If you don't do it for yourself, do it for future generations. And you can't, Jeff Bezos, Amazon, is getting ready to give away a lot of his fortune. The operative reality is that he's getting ready to give away a lot of his fortune. Again, he's getting ready to give away a lot of his fortune. Let's have some fortune to give away. And I think that needs to be stressed in the African American community. We need to build successful businesses. It's nothing to be ashamed of to own a several $1 million Black-owned business. You might stick out like a eyesore, but be that eyesore that can fuel the soccer programs, the flag football programs, the little league programs, put more money in the churches, provide nonprofit organizations with some grant opportunities, have those resources to be able to do that sort of thing. So again, create multi-million-dollar Black-owned businesses. What advice do you all have for aspiring entrepreneurs moving forward?
I would just say, make sure that you believe in whatever it is that you're looking to bring forth wholeheartedly. Number one. Number two, get out there and do the thing. Because in getting out there and doing the thing, you learn what works and you learn what doesn't work. I also will say, just make sure you always have and keep accountability, and make sure you stay consistent. And that's what I would say.
I'm going to say, don't quit your day job. Counterintuitive, right? But what I really mean by that is probably the most important thing I think is, as an entrepreneur, is to get experience in running a business. So, it's one thing to have a great idea, but if you don't know how to hire people, you don't know how to do a budget, you don't know how to do a marketing campaign, you're going to struggle with those things. So, my first advice for an entrepreneur would be, get some good business skills, some core competencies, and not in running a business. And that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to do your startup, but you might be working at another startup, but you get that experience. And then the second thing that not quitting your day job does, it allows you to put sweat equity into your idea. So being able to have resources, you don't have a car note, where you can not get paid for 12 months and work on your idea, and then you got the experience. And then the other thing I would say is just advice would be to just work on your network so that you have people you can bring to this company once it's going to be successful, as it starts to be successful, so you can reach out to mentors. I mean, it's just so important. So this whole concept of, the solo entrepreneur, and I'm just my own, it's my idea, I'm going to make it work. That works in some cases, but in many cases is around, how can you attract people to your idea, and then get people to get involved in that is a successful characteristic of entrepreneurs.
Okay. Last, I would probably say find your leadership chi. And what do I mean by that? I think you should use, especially for the young people in the room, you should use this educational opportunity that you have right now to involve yourself in as many leadership scenarios that you humanly possibly can. Give you a short story. When I was vice president and dean of diversity at Colgate University, the president sent me to New York City to meet with some alums. And one alum I met with in the Lower East Manhattan area, and we had lunch. And that individual was sharing with me an experience that they had with a major technology firm. And when that person was interviewed for that particular job, they kept asking him, well, what are your skills? What do you know how to do? And he started talking about the courses that he had and things of that nature. So the interviewer asked the question again, what do you know how to do? And he went through another edition of the courses that he had and some, other courses that he had. And the interviewer said, yeah, I understand that you've passed courses, you've had several classes, but what do you really know how to do? What that young man was sharing with me was that he failed to do a total recall with the experience, the leadership experience that the institution had provided him, because Colgate students had built enormous portfolios in terms of leadership on campus, leadership in various organizations, on campus, volunteer work, the whole 9 yards. So that's the kind of person that that technology firm was looking for, not the number of courses that the person had passed, but all of the leadership opportunities that they possessed, because that built a different portfolio for someone. So find your leadership chi, and that is one of the keys, in my personal opinion, towards entrepreneurship. And also remember that education and entrepreneurship are the great equalizers in a democratic society. So that would be my advice to aspiring entrepreneurs. So are we ready for questions?
I do have a question here. Is that working over there? I think it is. There are 3 questions, and I'll just run them all together because I'm conscious of time, and some people may be wanting to log off now, and others have places to go. But the 3 questions are, what has helped you navigate predominantly white spaces as an entrepreneur? What advice would you have for individuals who are just starting off? And I think you've done some of that already. And then finally, what would you tell your younger self when you were first starting?
Okay, so I'll take the first one and the third one. Younger self, very easily. Say yes more often. And again, we just talked about, take more risk, right? And take them early when you have the ability to do that. That's what I would probably say to my younger self. In terms of like navigating, advice for navigating in kind of current society right now for an entrepreneur. I think the advice I would provide there would be around just being just super aggressive in terms of relationship building. And other advice I would say is mentors and kind of current environments that can help to be allies, I think, for entrepreneurs of color, would be another thing that I would as a strategy.
Thank you for that. Checking the mic there.
I have this one. Sorry about that.
What I would tell my younger self is trusting yourself more. Just trusting yourself more and just believing yourself a little bit more. Give yourself, and don't beat yourself up so much about, things, because life is experience about learn. It's a journey. It's a journey. It's not the destination, it's the journey. And you have to just, take your journey and make your mistakes and learn from them and just trusting yourself more. Also, like he was saying, network. I would say network. Get out there and talk to people and get in some of those rooms and have some of those conversations. That's what I would say.
I would probably, because I think the question, one of the questions was how have we all been able to navigate white business opportunities? And I can just be quite blunt. Education. People call me Dr. Grinnell. I worked hard for that. And with working hard for that came some experiences that perhaps are not often afforded to a lot of other people. So I realized at a very early age in my professional walk that I needed to take the education that I have and use it to really make a living for myself and my family. And a younger self of me would be that if I'm gonna really be an entrepreneur, I got to be dedicated to the entrepreneurial lifestyle. There's a lifestyle that comes with entrepreneurship, and you have to be committed, you have to be dedicated, and you have to be disciplined to that. There is no other, you can't stick your little toe in the water and stick your toe out of the water when things get, you have to be in it 110% through the good and the bad and the significant difficult part. You have to be real about it. It's a lifestyle, and you have to embrace it, you have to take it in, and you have to work it.
Thank you. I don't see any others, but I'm also conscious of this. So if there are others that come in, we can address them as they.
Questions from the,
But in the room, yeah,
audience in the room?
absolutely.
Questions from participants. Guys, I came in on the snow.
I always kind of like to ask members of the club this when they show up. What are just some of your like traits that you see in a good entrepreneur? I know you guys have talked a little bit about like, they see a problem, they have to think about the solution, not the problem. So I've even heard some people call like a good entrepreneur is like 50% in denial. But what other traits do you guys see that are good?
Are you asking for good traits?
Yeah, good traits.
I think one would be when everybody else in the room says no, you still believe in the yes.
I would say being resilient and also being teachable, because you don't know everything,
Right.
so you also have to always be teachable and open to new ideas and just new knowledge.
And I'm going to say, so being able to qualify advice, I think is really important, because you're going to get a lot of different advice. People want to help you. A lot of that advice is not going to be coherent. It's going to be conflicting advice. So being able to kind of assess that and then make a decision on how you're going to use that advice. So being able to use that, I guess that, as I'm thinking, talking, processing information, I think is also really great. And then probably the thing I think that my greatest entrepreneurs is make the complex simple. It's so important. And, they can take a complex idea and then they boil it down to, so it's like this, and they put it in a metaphor or something like that, 2 or 3 word summary of something that somebody would spend 15 PowerPoints on pages. That's so important. Communication.
Sure.
I think you had to push your mic.
You don't have to be that close to it.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's just for the recording.
Oh, for the recording. I don't know if anybody said this because I was out there. I think you have to be a risk taker, and it's okay to fail. Try again. I have a granddaughter who graduated from high school. Grandma, what should I do? What if I go there and don't make it? I said, it's fine. You're young enough. You just pick yourself up and do something else. I'm talking about different universities. But I don't know if that was mentioned. I think I'm a kind of perfectionist, and I was kind of mean to my kids because I didn't want them to fail. But as I gain wisdom, it's okay to fail. Don't feel bad, because as long as you learn from it. That's my comments for you.
I love that. Matter of fact, I think all of us mentioned risk taking at some point in time during the session today. But let me tell you how I really internalize what you say. I don't like working with people who've never failed. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because they scare me. Because when the stuff hits the fan, they've never experienced it before. That's when it really gets to be kind of iffy for me, because I want individuals who have bumped their heads and bruised their nose and didn't have anything in the cabinet but some peanut butter and jelly to eat, because you don't want to go back there. And you'll do everything you can to not go back there. So yeah, risk taking is huge.
What would you say, like, where do you get your ideas from, or like how do you get inspired for these ideas, or brainstorm, or how do you find what you're passionate about?
I would say living and just, because that's where you feel, that's where you find yourself. Once you find yourself, then you're closer to finding out what your purpose is. And once you find out what your purpose is, then you know what you're here to do and what problems you're here to solve. So I would just say living life and experiencing life.
I'm gonna add here. So yeah, this concept of finding the right idea. I remember like early in my career, I was thinking about doing some things entrepreneurial. It's kind of like, okay, what's going to be my idea? What's my idea? And I mean, I think there's the path where it's like I come up with this eureka moment and this great idea. And then I think, and there's some successes there. I think there's also more of kind of an evolutionary path where there's other ways where you can kind of engineer innovation. So one thing you can do, many organizations have been, entrepreneurs have been successful, is when you take like a known technology and then apply it in a new way or to a new problem, right? And so your inspiration can be this technology that was used in another market, and then it's like, okay, so how can I apply this here? And it could be innovative in its application, but not necessarily, you don't have to reinvent the technology. I think the other thing that you can do for inspiration is really stay abreast of trends that are happening in whatever sector you're in, what other organizations are doing, they're learning from their failures. It was so interesting. I remember when I was working at one of my early jobs, and I was working in a group that was doing like bleeding edge technology. But it was interesting because our CEO was not a believer of an early adopter. And he thought that you can be a fast follower, which is true. So you don't necessarily have to be on the bleeding edge. And then the other thing I would say is, if you're not that you're not blessed with being able to come up with that eureka moment, I think there's a way you can help with get innovation or identify innovations through hard work, where you're talking to customers and then just understanding what their needs are. And then many times, because of just unique experience you bring, or that you're not like that close to the problem, your customers can help you see some things that you can see from those customer discoveries that's innovative for them, that currently, because they have blind spots, they're not able to see. So then the last thing I would say is just don't, as an entrepreneur, just don't get hung up on, I got to come up with that right idea. Come up with a good idea, test it, put it in the marketplace, and then start to refine it. And then your customers in your market will help you kind of refine that idea.
I think we have time maybe for one. Well, I'm conscious of time. We were, so to our audience out there, if they need to go, and our guests here, your schedule, but are you open to a few more?
Yes, sure.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Right here. We're going to go here. And then go.
I know, Mr. Grinnell, you already sort of answered this this before, but looking at yourselves now, I assume that you weren't always with the mindset that you have now of being risk takers and building things. What would you say was if you had to highlight one experience, a formative experience in your personal lives that set you on this path to where you are now?
As I said, it's just me personally giving birth from predominantly white institutions, hospitals, or birthing centers. It just showed me the lack of just basically just basically the lack of, people not taking what I'm saying serious, or me not being able to communicate that to them well enough for them to understand what I'm saying, and just witnessing other people go through the same things, and just being able to see those, and then also, already know that this is something that I want to do, as far as because originally I wanted to catch babies. So in the midst of basically the pandemic, with schools closing down, I was like, well, I know I want to be in the birthing room, but how can I get there, without having to go through all the schooling, with schools shutting down and things like that. And that's when I bumped into a doula, or what is a doula, and what do they do, and I fell in love from there. So just being able to solve problems and help people by advocating, and just being there to support them, that's what got me here.
I think for me, I wouldn't say there was one eureka, one incident. I would say it was a succession of scenarios that all culminated in me coming to an understanding that I had learned from some of the best minds that were out there. Maybe I needed to take that mentorship, that those hands that had been laid on me, and take it to the marketplace. So that was how I actually got involved. My business, I do a lot of strategic planning. I do a lot of educational projects, and I do business intelligence. And that's not something that you can read a book on. You can read as many books on them as you want, but you got to be able to see it in action. And I was able to see it in action, learning it from some of the best minds that are out here. And I came to the understanding that I too can do this. And I put that, what I call that leap of faith out there. And it's been good so far.
I'd like to just make a comment, what it's worth. Early, there was some talk about entrepreneurship, kind of a focus on wealth. I thought maybe a little too much. Talk about our founding fathers, and this is what they wanted. That was 250 some years ago. And I don't know that it applies in our society anymore. We are in a complex world. It's what do you define wealth as? And wealth to many has become first money, second money, third money, fourth money, etc. But there's different types of wealth. And there was a talk on social, what I think the imprint you leave, obviously you need money to grow your organization, whatever it is. But what is your impact on society? And we see a lot of the wealth in this nation over the couple hundred years has been done by exploiting people, exploiting resources, and really taking and not giving them enough back. So when you're creating that wealth, also have to leave the rest of the world in a better place. And you have to look at the effect on society. And that is extremely important. You all have talked on education. How many educators? Each educator is an entrepreneur. And their wealth very often comes from seeing the students achieve and excel. And the students see that, and they go back and they talk to their educators. There's one guy I think there's probably a tremendous, I consider him a national treasure. is an old man, but age 94, soon to be 94. You all have heard of him, I'm sure, is Noam Chomsky. That man is brilliant. And I'm sure he's got, enough money, but he's not what you would call super wealthy. But boy, the impression he's made and what he's done to make people think outside the box is really tremendous. So wealth comes in different forms. And I think we're a little too hung up on money as opposed to accomplishment. So,
I don't know if that was maybe directed at me because I was the one that mentioned the. No, I love these conversations. So no.
Because you did esteem yourself with other comments.
Right. I will say this, and it's funny that we're having this conversation in the midst of what is supposed to be a conversation about Black entrepreneurship. A couple of years ago, I gave a talk at the Milwaukee Public Library, and it really was a reaction to a paper that had been written by my mentor at the University of Texas at Austin, Dr. John Sibley Butler. It took me 2 years to react to the paper that he had put together. So I had about a 35-page reaction, and I presented it at the Milwaukee Public Library. There were some Black entrepreneurs sitting out in the audience. And part of my conversation was that I wanted to protect them from societal pressure for them to give back so early along their journey, because when I compare Black entrepreneurship with white entrepreneurship, Black entrepreneurs are more pressured to give back to their community at a much faster, at a much earlier rate, in my personal opinion, than white entrepreneurs. And so how could I, through that talk, put them in an incubator and protect them to a point whereby they could go on that journey, create wealth, because it does take money in order to make this happen. If you're in entrepreneurship and for reasons other than creating wealth, I don't know if I want to call it entrepreneurship. You might want to call it something else. But to me, it ain't entrepreneurship in its purest form. Protect them and then allow them to have the requisite resources to be able to give back. There are those of us who have gone through the ranks of historically Black colleges and universities. I'm a proud, alum of Tougaloo College. If I don't have anything, I can't give Tougaloo anything. None of the alums at Tougaloo can give back to the institution if we don't have anything to give back. So we have to be able to accumulate the requisite resources in order to be able to be a part of the donor class of those institutions and any other infrastructures that are in our communities, like our Black churches, nonprofits, youth-related activities, and things of that nature. So yeah, well, it helps. It's a necessity in order to do that. That's just, I'm one person with my own warped way of thinking about the world, and I don't profess to speak for anybody else but Keenan Grinnell.
This question is mainly for Tamisha, but as a woman, did you have to deal with any extra hardships that men might not have?
We're in the entrepreneurship world, so I haven't been placed in a lot of different situations to where I felt that men had more opportunity or more advances than I have. I feel like just being an entrepreneur, whatever the case may be, there's gonna always be people doing things ahead of you or getting advances before you. That still shouldn't, deter you from doing what you do. Stay the course and keep believing in yourself and keep going out there networking and educating yourself and just being aware of what your idea brings to the community that you're in, and stay aware of what's going on, and stay relevant.
Any other questions? Anybody? Thank you all so much. You have been such a beautiful group. We have been thoroughly blessed from this experience. And I know me personally, I go back to Wauwatosa in Milwaukee, just knowing that I have some new friends at UW-Stout, and I'd love to come back.